There are moments in life when you stand at a dead end. You've prayed, you've waited, you've tried everything you know how to try, and still nothing changes. The door won't open. The situation won't move. The burden won't lift. It feels like you've reached the end of the road. But what you call the end, God calls the setup for a breakthrough. See, we often think breakthrough comes when we have options. God says breakthrough comes when you run out of them. Because as long as you still have another plan, another person, another strategy to lean on, you haven't fully leaned on Him yet. And God is not interested in sharing His glory with your backup plans. When there's no way forward, no visible solution, no human explanation, that's when God steps in and does what only He can do. He specializes in making a way out of no way, not when it's easy, not when it's logical, but when it's impossible. Some of you are frustrated because you've been asking God for a breakthrough, but He hasn't moved yet. Let me suggest something to you. Maybe He's not waiting on the situation. Maybe He's waiting on you. Waiting for you to stop trusting what you see and start trusting what He said. Waiting for you to shift from panic to faith, from fear to confidence, from fear to confidence. Because breakthrough is not just about God changing your situation, it's about God changing your position. He wants you to stand firm even when everything around you is shaking. He wants you to believe even when there's no evidence. He wants you to trust Him, not because it makes sense, but because He said it. You see, when God brings a breakthrough, He doesn't just fix the problem, He reveals His power. And sometimes He will allow things to get worse before they get better, just so when He moves, nobody can take credit but Him. So don't lose heart in the delay. The delay is not denial, it's preparation. God is aligning things you cannot see. He's moving pieces behind the scenes. He's setting the stage so that when the breakthrough comes, it won't just be good, it will be undeniable. And when that moment comes, when the door finally opens, when the burden lifts, when the answer arrives, you look back and realize that what seemed impossible was simply an opportunity for God to prove who He is. So hold on, stay faithful, keep trusting, because when there is no way, that's exactly where God does His best work. There are seasons in life when everything seems to come to a halt. There are seasons in life when everything seems to come to a halt. You've been moving forward, making plans, putting in effort, believing things would work out, and then suddenly you hit a wall. No progress, no answers, no visible way forward. It feels like everything is stopped, like you've reached a dead end with nowhere else to go. In that moment, frustration builds, doubt creeps in, and questions begin to rise. Why is this happening? Why now? Why me? But what feels like an ending to you is often a strategic setup by God. What looks like a closed door is not always rejection. Sometimes it is divine redirection. God has a way of allowing you to come to the end of your own understanding so that you can begin to experience the fullness of His power. Because as long as you believe you can figure it out on your own, you will lean on your own strength. And as long as you lean on your own strength, you limit what God wants to show you. Dead ends have a purpose. They force you to stop striving and start trusting. They strip away your illusions of control and remind you that you were never in control to begin with. And while that can feel uncomfortable, even painful, it is often necessary. Because God is not just interested in getting you to your destination, He is interested in developing your dependence on Him along the way. Think about it. When everything is going smoothly, when doors are opening and opportunities are flowing, it's easy to feel confident in yourself. It's easy to believe that your effort, your intelligence, your connections are what's making things happen. But when you hit a dead end, all of that confidence is shaken. Suddenly, what used to work no longer works. The strategies that once brought success now fall flat. The people you thought you could rely on are unable to help. And in that moment, you are faced with a choice: either give in to despair or turn fully toward God. That's why a dead end is not a disaster. It's a defining moment. It is where your faith is tested and your perspective is challenged. It is where you learn whether you truly trust God or just trust the outcomes you were expecting. Because real faith is not based on what you see. It is based on who God is, even when you cannot see anything at all. Sometimes God will intentionally lead you to a place where there are no easy answers, no quick fixes, no visible solutions. Not because he wants to harm you, but because he wants to reveal himself to you in a deeper way. He wants you to see that he is not limited by your limitations. He is not confined by your circumstances. He is not restricted by what seems possible or impossible in your eyes. In fact, it is often in the most impossible situations that God does his most powerful work. When there is no logical explanation, no human solution, no clear path forward, that's when his power stands out the most. Because when a breakthrough comes in that kind of situation, there is no confusion about where it came from. It didn't come from your ability. It didn't come from your resources. It came from God. So instead of viewing your dead end as a failure, begin to see it as preparation. Instead of asking, why is this happening? Why is this happening to me? Start asking, what is God trying to show me through this? Shift your perspective from frustration to expectation. Because if God has allowed you to reach this point, it's not to leave you there. It's to demonstrate something greater than you've ever experienced before. There is something powerful about being in a place where only God can come through for you. It removes all distractions, all alternatives, all backup plans, and places your focus exactly where it needs to be. And in that place, your faith has the opportunity to grow stronger than ever before. So when you find yourself at a dead end, don't lose hope. Don't assume it's over. Don't assume it's over. Don't believe the lie that nothing good can come from this moment. Because what looks like the end of the road may actually be the beginning of something far greater than you ever imagined. There comes a point in life when your own strength is no longer enough. You've exhausted your ideas, used up your energy, and tried every solution you could think of. At first, you approached the situation with confidence, believing you could fix it, manage it, or work your way through it. But slowly that confidence begins to fade as each attempt falls short. What once seemed possible now feels unreachable, and what once felt in your control now feels completely out of your hands. This is the place most people try to avoid. It's uncomfortable to admit that you don't have the answer. It's difficult to accept that your ability has limits. Everything in us wants to hold on to control, to find another strategy, to figure out one more way to make things happen. But there is a deeper truth at work in these moments. God often waits until your options run out so that his power can step in without competition. As long as you still believe you can handle it on your own, a part of you will continue to rely on yourself. You may pray, but you are still depending on your plan. You may ask God for help, but you're still trusting your backup options. And as long as self-reliance is in control, full dependence on God is not yet in place. That's why sometimes the situation doesn't change. Not because God is absent, but because he is allowing you to come to the end of yourself. Reaching the end of your own ability is not failure, it is alignment. It is the moment when your dependence shifts from what you can do to what only God can do. And that shift is where breakthrough begins. Because breakthrough is not born out of human strength. It is born out of divine intervention. When your options disappear, clarity increases. Distractions fall away. You stop looking left and right for answers and start looking up. And in that posture, something powerful happens. Your faith becomes real, not theoretical, not casual, but intentional and desperate in the best sense of the word. You begin to trust God, not because it feels comfortable, but because he is your only source. This kind of dependence changes how you think. Instead of asking, what else can I try? You begin asking, God, what are you going to do? Instead of striving harder, you begin surrendering deeper. And surrender is not weakness. It is positioning. It is placing yourself where God's power can operate freely in your life. There is a difference between working for a breakthrough and waiting on God for one. Working relies on your effort. Waiting relies on his timing. And while waiting can feel passive, it is actually one of the most active expressions of faith. It means you trust that even when you cannot see movement, God is still moving. Even when you don't have answers, He is still in control. Sometimes God removes your options on purpose. He allows doors to close, resources to dry up, and plans to fail, not to harm you, but to guide you. Because as long as multiple doors are open, you might choose the wrong one. But when there is only one way left, His way, you are positioned exactly where you need to be. And when God steps in, He does not need what you needed. He does not require the resources you thought were essential. He is not limited by the lack you see. He creates solutions where none exist. He opens doors that no one else can open. He makes a way in places where there was no path before. That's the kind of power that shows up when human options disappear. What you thought was working against you is actually working for you. The loss of options is not the loss of hope. It is the removal of distractions. It is God clearing the stage so that when He moves, there will be no confusion about who made it happen. So instead of fearing the moment when you have nothing left, learn to embrace it. Because nothing left in your hands often means everything is now in God's hands, and there's no safer place to be than there. Fear has a way of speaking louder than anything else when life becomes uncertain. It fills your mind with worst-case scenarios, magnifies every obstacle, and convinces you that what lies ahead is too much to handle. It tells you to step back, to play it safe, to expect less so you won't be disappointed. And if you're not careful, fear will begin to shape your decisions, limit your vision, and weaken your confidence. But fear was never meant to lead your life. It was never designed to be your guide. In fact, fear thrives in the absence of trust. The less you trust, the stronger fear becomes. And the stronger fear becomes, the harder it is to move forward. That's why there has to be a deliberate shift, a conscious decision to stop allowing fear to dominate your thinking and start allowing faith to take its place. Faith is not the denial of reality. It doesn't pretend that challenges don't exist or that difficulties aren't real. Faith sees the same obstacles, the same limitations, the same uncertainties, but it chooses to believe that God is greater than all of them. It's not about ignoring what you see. It's about not letting what you see override what God has said. The battle between fear and faith often takes place in your thoughts. Fear speaks in possibilities of failure, loss, and defeat. Faith speaks in promises, purpose, and hope. Fear says, what if it doesn't work out? Faith says, what if God is already working it out? Faith says, what if God is already working it out? Fear focuses on what could go wrong. Faith focuses on who is in control. Replacing fear with faith is not automatic. It requires intentional effort. It means choosing to believe even when emotions are pulling you in the opposite direction. It means standing on truth, even when circumstances seem to contradict it. And sometimes it means taking a step forward when everything inside you is telling you to stay still. There is a moment in every challenging situation where you have to decide which voice you will follow. The voice of fear will always be loud, urgent, and convincing. It will demand your attention and push you toward retreat. But the voice of faith is often quieter. It calls you to trust, to stand, to move forward with confidence, not because you have all the answers, but because you know the one who does. When you begin to operate in faith, something shifts within you. Your perspective changes. Instead of seeing obstacles as barriers, you begin to see them as opportunities for God to move. Instead of being overwhelmed by uncertainty, you become anchored in trust. And instead of shrinking back, you start stepping forward with boldness. This doesn't mean fear will disappear completely. Fear may still show up, still whisper doubts, still try to influence your thinking. But it no longer has authority over your actions. You acknowledge it, but you don't obey it. You hear it, but you don't follow it. Because you have made a decision that your life will be directed by faith, not controlled by fear, faith gives you the strength to keep going when nothing around you is changing. It gives you the courage to believe when there is no visible evidence. It allows you to hold on when it would be easier to let go. And most importantly, it connects you to the power of God in a way that fear never can. When you choose faith, you are choosing to trust God's character. You are choosing to believe that He is faithful, that He is able, that He is working even when you cannot see it. You are placing your confidence not in your circumstances, but in His promises. And that choice makes all the difference. Because breakthrough doesn't come to those who are driven by fear. It comes to those who are anchored in faith. It comes to those who are willing to trust beyond what they can see, to believe beyond what they can understand, and to move forward even when the path is unclear. So every day, in every situation, you are faced with the same decision. Will you allow fear to speak louder, or will you let faith rise higher? The answer to that question will determine not only how you feel, but how you live, and ultimately how you experience the breakthrough that God has already prepared. Waiting is one of the hardest experiences to endure, especially when you are believing for something important. You've prayed, you've trusted, you've held on as long as you know how, and yet nothing seems to change. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and sometimes even longer. In that stretch of time, it's easy to assume that the silence means something is wrong. It's easy to believe that the delay is a sign that God has forgotten, ignored, or denied your request. But delay does not mean denial. What feels like inactivity on your side is often intense activity on God's side. Just because you cannot see movement does not mean nothing is happening. In fact, some of the most important work is done in seasons where there is no visible progress. God operates beyond what your eyes can perceive, and He is often arranging, aligning, and preparing things in ways you cannot yet understand. There is a purpose in the waiting. It is not empty time. It is not wasted time. It is preparation time. God is not just focused on the outcome you are asking for. He's also focused on who you are becoming in the process. Because if He gives you the breakthrough before you are ready, the very thing you prayed for could become something you cannot sustain. Waiting develops patience, but more than that, it develops trust. It teaches you to rely on God not only for answers, but for timing. It challenges your need for control and invites you into a deeper level of surrender. When you don't know when something will happen, you are forced to decide whether you truly believe that God's timing is better than your own. In these moments, your faith is refined. It moves from being based on immediate results to being rooted in confidence in God's character. You begin to trust not just what He can do, but who He is. And that kind of faith is stronger, deeper, and more enduring than a faith that only survives when things are moving quickly. Sometimes the delay is not about you, it's about everything around you. There are pieces being put into place, circumstances being adjusted, and people being positioned that you may never fully see. If things were to happen immediately, they would be incomplete. They would lack the fullness of what God intends. So He takes His time, not because He is slow, but because He is precise. It's also important to understand that waiting does not mean doing nothing. Waiting is active, not passive. It is a posture of expectation. It is continuing to pray, continuing to believe, continuing to prepare your heart and mind for what is coming. It is choosing to remain faithful even when there is no visible reward. In the waiting, your attitude matters. It's easy to become frustrated, discouraged, or even bitter when things take longer than expected. But those responses can cloud your vision and weaken your faith. Instead, there is an invitation to shift your mindset, to see the waiting not as a burden, but as an opportunity. An opportunity to grow, to deepen your relationship with God, and to strengthen your trust in Him. There is also protection in the delay. Sometimes what you want is not yet safe for you, not because it is bad, but because the timing is not right. God sees what you cannot see. He understands consequences you cannot predict. And in His wisdom, He may hold something back not to punish you, but to protect you. And when the moment finally comes, when the waiting ends and the breakthrough arrives, you will realize that the timing was not random. It was intentional. It was exact. Everything will come together in a way that could not have happened earlier. And in that moment, you will not only appreciate the outcome, you will understand the process. The delay will make sense. The waiting will have meaning. And the faith you develop during that time will allow you to step into your breakthrough with strength, confidence, and gratitude, because you will know that it didn't happen by accident. It happened at the right time, in the right way, according to a plan that was greater than anything you could have arranged on your own. When a breakthrough finally comes, there is a tendency to look back and trace it to something you did. You remember the effort you put in, the decisions you made, the persistence you showed, and it's natural to connect those things to the outcome. But there are moments in life when the result is so far beyond your ability, so perfectly timed, and so unexpectedly aligned that you cannot honestly take credit for it. You know deep down that what just happened could only have been the work of God. That is the kind of breakthrough that reveals His power. It is not just about solving a problem or changing a situation. It is about making His presence and authority undeniable. It shifts the focus away from human effort and places it squarely on divine intervention. Because when God moves in a way that surpasses logic and exceeds expectations, it becomes clear that this was never about what you could do. It was always about what He can do. There is something transformative about experiencing that kind of moment. It humbles you, it reminds you of your limitations, but more importantly, it highlights His limitless nature. You begin to see that the same God you pray to is not distant or passive, but active and powerful, capable of stepping into real situations and changing them in ways you never could. Sometimes before that kind of breakthrough happens, things will reach a point where your own ability is completely removed from the equation. You've tried everything you know and nothing has worked. You've reached the end of your strength, your resources, and your understanding. And it is right there, in that space of total dependence, that God often chooses to act. Not earlier, when you still had options. Not when you could still take partial credit. But when the outcome will clearly point back to Him. This is why some situations feel like they get worse before they get better. It's not because things are out of control. It's because God is setting the stage. He is allowing the situation to reach a level where when He steps in, there will be no confusion about who made the difference. The greater the impossibility, the greater the display of His power when the breakthrough comes. And when that breakthrough happens, it does more than just change your circumstances. It changes your perspective. You no longer see challenges the same way. What once intimidated you now reminds you of what God is capable of. What once caused fear now becomes an opportunity for faith. Because you've seen firsthand that He can do what you cannot. This kind of experience also strengthens your trust moving forward. The next time you face a difficult sit, you won't approach it with the same level of doubt. You will remember what God has already done. You will recall how He made a way when there was none, how He provided when there was lack, how He answered when there seemed to be silence. And that memory becomes a foundation for your faith. It also shifts your focus from performance to reliance. Instead of feeling like everything depends on you, you begin to understand that your role is to trust and obey, while God's role is to provide and deliver. That doesn't mean you stop putting in effort. It means your confidence is no longer rooted in your effort. It is rooted in His ability. There is also a testimony that comes out of this kind of breakthrough. Your story becomes evidence of God's power to others. People who are facing their own impossible situations can look at what happened in your life and find hope, not because of who you are, but because of what God has shown Himself to be through your experience. And in those moments, the glory goes where it belongs. Not to your strategy, not to your strength, not to your connections, but to God. Because it is clear that without Him, the outcome would have been very different. So when breakthrough comes, it is more than a personal victory. It is a revelation. It is a reminder that God is still at work, still powerful, still able to step into the most impossible situations and turn them around. And once you've experienced that, you carry a different kind of confidence, not in yourself, but in the one who made it all possible. One of the hardest truths to accept is that not every breakthrough begins with visible change. In fact, some of the most important breakthroughs start internally. Long before anything shifts externally, you may be looking for a change in your circumstances, a door to open, a problem to be solved. But God often begins by working on you because if the inside is not prepared, the outside will not be sustained. It is natural to focus on what you want God to do around you. You want the situation fixed, the obstacle removed, the answer delivered. But God's priority is not just to improve your situation, it is to transform your perspective, your character, and your capacity. He is concerned with who you are becoming, not just what you are receiving. There are times when the real limitation is not the situation itself, but the way you see it. Your mindset, your beliefs, and your expectations can either align with God's purpose or resist it. If your thinking is shaped by doubt, fear, or past disappointment, it can prevent you from stepping into what God is trying to do. That's why internal change is so important. It prepares you to recognize, receive, and handle the breakthrough when it comes. Growth often happens in uncomfortable ways. It may involve confronting attitudes you didn't realize were holding you back, letting go of habits that feel familiar, or releasing control in areas where you've always tried to stay in charge. None of this is easy, but it is necessary. Because God cannot pour new things into a life that is not ready to carry them. Sometimes the delay you experience is directly connected to this process of preparation. It's not that God is unwilling to move, it's that He is ensuring that when He does, you are in the right position to handle it. If you were to act too soon, you might mishandle the blessing, misunderstand the purpose, or lose what He intended to give you. There is also a shift that needs to happen in how you define success. If your focus is only on external results, you may miss the deeper work God is doing within you. But when you begin to value internal growth, greater patience, stronger faith, deeper trust, you start to see that progress is happening, even if it doesn't look defiant, way you expected. This internal breakthrough changes how you respond to challenges. Instead of reacting with frustration or discouragement, you begin to respond with confidence and stability. You are no longer easily shaken by delays or setbacks because your foundation is no longer based on circumstances. It is based on your trust in God. It also affects how you carry yourself in the waiting. You become more disciplined, more focused, and more aligned with what God is doing. You are not just waiting for something to happen. You are becoming someone who is ready when it does happen. And that readiness is what makes the external breakthrough sustainable. There is a maturity that comes from this process. You start to understand that God's ways are not rushed and His timing is not random. Everything He does is intentional, including the work He is doing inside you. And when you embrace that, the waiting becomes less about frustration and more about transformation. You begin to see that the real breakthrough is not just the change in your situation, but the change in you. Because once you are different on the inside, you can handle different things on the outside. You can carry more responsibility, navigate greater challenges, and walk in a deeper level of purpose. And when the external breakthrough finally comes, you will be ready for it. Not just excited about it, but equipped for it. You will have the wisdom to manage it, the character to sustain it, and the perspective to use it in the right way. Because what God has done in you will support what He is doing for you. So instead of resisting the internal work, embrace it. Recognize that God is not delaying your breakthrough. He is developing you for it. And that development is not a distraction from your breakthrough. It is a vital part of it. There is a moment that comes after the struggle, after the waiting, that of the uncertainty when everything finally shifts. The door opens, the answer arrives, the burden lifts, and what once seemed impossible becomes reality. It's the kind of moment you've been hoping for, praying for, holding on for. But what matters just as much as receiving that breakthrough is how you respond once it comes. It is easy to celebrate the outcome and move on, to enjoy the relief and quickly return to normal life. But breakthrough moments are not meant to be temporary highs. They are meant to create lasting impact. They are opportunities to recognize, remember, and realign your life with a deeper understanding of who God is and how he works, gratitude is one of the first and most important responses. Not a casual acknowledgement, but a deep recognition that what has happened is not something you could have accomplished on your own. Gratitude keeps your heart in the right place. It prevents pride from taking root and reminds you that every good thing you experience is connected to God's faithfulness, not just your effort. At the same time, it is important.
Loving you alone feels so beautiful, and yet it hurts the most. You became my quiet sunrise, the dream I never dared to say. Every smile you gave so freely took my breath a little away. I held this love like fragile glass, so precious, soft and true. But every beat inside my heart was only reaching out to you. Unspoken love is sweet and painful, like honey mixed with rain. A tender hope I hold so tightly, while it slowly breaks me. Loving you from just one side now leaves my soul in silent blue. 'Cause the deeper that I fall alone, the lonelier I do. can't blame my heart for choosing someone it could never keep. So I smile through hidden heartache and love you quietly. Unspoken love is sweet and painful, like honey mixed with rain. A tender hope I hold so tightly, while it slowly breaks me. Loving you from just one side now leaves my soul in silent blue. 'Cause the deeper that I fall alone, the lonelier I do. Maybe loving you in silence is the closest I can stay, though it leaves behind a sorrow that may never fade away. Unspoken love is sweet and painful, like honey mixed with rain. A tender hope I hold so tightly, while it slowly breaks me. Loving you from just one side now leaves my soul in silent blue. 'Cause the deeper that I fall alone, the lonelier I do.